They say trust is the foundation of every relationship, but what happens when that foundation is built on lies? When the person you gave everything to looks you in the eye, holds your hand, and feeds you beautiful words while stabbing you in the back? I learned the hard way that some people are masters of deception, and my husband, he was the best actor I'd ever seen. For months, I lived in what I thought was a happy marriage. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our quiet moments on the couch watching shows together. He'd kiss my forehead every morning before work. He'd text me during lunch breaks with silly emojis. He'd hold me at night and tell me I was his entire world, but it was all a performance, a carefully rehearsed play where I was the only one who didn't know the script. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my husband lied to my face for 6 months straight, how I discovered the truth in the most unexpected way, and how my final move left him completely and utterly speechless. In the beginning, and it started on a Tuesday. Isn't it funny how life-changing moments always seem to happen on the most ordinary days? I was at home working from my laptop in our small home office. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so my schedule is pretty flexible. That day, I finished a project early and decided to surprise my husband, Marcus, by cooking his favorite meal for dinner. Marcus worked as a sales manager at a tech company downtown, or at least that's what he told me. He'd leave every morning at 8, come home around 6:30, sometimes later if he had client meetings. I never questioned it. Why would I? We'd been married for 4 years, together for 7. I trusted him completely. That Tuesday afternoon, around 3 o'clock, I realized I was missing an ingredient for the recipe. I grabbed my keys and headed to the grocery store. The store was just 15 minutes from our house, in a busy shopping district I didn't usually visit during weekdays. I parked, walked in, grabbed what I needed, and was heading back to my car when I saw something that made my heart stop. There, across the parking lot, sitting at a small outdoor cafe, was Marcus, but he wasn't alone. He was sitting across from a woman, a beautiful woman with long dark hair, wearing a professional outfit. They were laughing, not just casual laughing, but the kind of genuine, intimate laughter that makes your stomach drop when you see your spouse sharing it with someone else. I froze. My first thought was maybe it's a work colleague, maybe it's just a business lunch, but something felt wrong. The way he leaned forward, the way she touched his hand across the table, the way he looked at her with eyes I thought he reserved only for me. I stood there, hidden partially behind a pillar, watching them for what felt like hours but was probably only 5 minutes. They ordered coffee, they shared a dessert. At one point, she said something that made him throw his head back in laughter, and she reached over and playfully slapped his shoulder. The gesture was so familiar, so comfortable, that my blood ran cold. And then he checked his watch, said something to her, and they both stood up, and that's when it happened. He leaned in and kissed her, not on the cheek, on the lips. A soft, lingering kiss that told me everything I needed to know. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my grocery bag. A can rolled across the pavement, making a loud noise, but they were too absorbed in each other to notice. They walked to separate cars, waved goodbye, and drove off in different directions. I stood there in that parking lot feeling like my entire world had just shattered into a million pieces. The man I loved, the man I'd built a life with, the man who'd promised to be faithful and honest until death do us part, was a liar, a cheater, a stranger wearing the face of my husband. The confirmation. I didn't confront him that day. I know, some of you might think I should have, but I needed to be sure. I needed to know how deep this went. Was it a one-time mistake, a recent development, or had this been going on longer than I wanted to imagine? So I did something I never thought I'd do. Started investigating my own husband. When he came home that evening at 6:30, right on schedule, he kissed me like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," he said with that warm smile. "How was your day?" And Tyndez and indeed having Pramasheen with that warm smile. "How was your day?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at him, but instead I smiled back. "Good. How was work?" "Oh, you know." Same old stuff. Long meetings, difficult clients. I'm exhausted. He loosened his tie and headed upstairs to change. Such a perfect performance. Such convincing lies. That night, while he was in the shower, I checked his phone. Yes, I know some people think that's crossing a line, but the line had already been crossed the moment he kissed another woman. His phone was usually locked, but I knew his passcode. He'd given it to me himself months ago, saying we should have no secrets from each other. The irony was almost funny. I opened his messages. At first, everything looked normal. Texts from coworkers, his mom, a few friends. But then I noticed something. There were several calls to an unknown number, but no text thread for that number. He deleted the messages but forgot to delete the call log. My heart was pounding as I memorized that number. I quickly put his phone back exactly where he'd left it and went downstairs. The next morning, after he left for work, I called the number from a burner phone I'd bought years ago for a freelance project where clients needed a separate contact number. "Hey," a woman answered. "Hello?" I recognized that voice. I didn't know how, but I did. "Hi, I'm calling about Marcus," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. "Who is this?" "A friend." "Is this someone who knows Marcus well?" Another pause, longer this time. "I think you have the wrong number." She hung up, but that pause told me everything. The hesitation, the caution in her voice. This wasn't innocent. This was a woman who had something to hide. Digging deeper, over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I tracked his schedule obsessively. I noticed patterns I'd missed before. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he'd come home an hour later than usual. Client dinners, he'd say, can't be avoided. I started checking our bank statements, something I rarely did because Marcus handled most of our finances. He made more money than me, so it just made sense for him to manage the bills. But when I looked closely, I found something disturbing. There were charges I didn't recognize, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a jewelry purchase for $300 back in February, but I'd never received any jewelry. Hotel charges in the city, even though we lived just 30 minutes away. Why would he need a hotel? Each discovery felt like another knife in my back. How had I been so blind? How had I missed all these signs? I hired a private investigator. Yes, it sounds dramatic, but I needed the truth, clear, undeniable proof before taking my next step. The investigator, Claire, was calm, sharp, and incredibly discreet. She charged me $2,000 for a week of surveillance, and honestly, it felt like the smartest investment I'd made in years. 5 days later, Claire called with her findings. My husband had been secretly seeing a woman named Jessica Monroe, someone from his workplace. They'd been involved for at least 6 months. Lunch meetings disguised as work discussions, afternoons mysteriously blocked off on his calendar, constant messages during office hours, everything hidden, everything rehearsed. 6 months, half a year of half a year of him coming home to me, acting like nothing was wrong, pretending to be the man I trusted. Then Claire told me something that changed everything. Jessica didn't even know he was married. He had told her he was divorced and that I was his difficult ex, someone he was still dealing with because of legal complications. He rewrote our entire life together and placed himself as the victim and me as the problem. The moment Claire said it, something inside me shifted. The hurt was still deep, but a new emotion took its place, controlled, focused anger. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had erased me from his story, and that's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to simply walk away. I wasn't going to cry quietly and accept the damage. No, I was going to make sure he faced every consequence of every lie he ever told. I was going to reveal the truth at the perfect moment, with precision, with patience, and with impact. Because real revenge isn't loud or messy, it's patient, it's strategic, and when it finally hits, it's unforgettable. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I think it's more than that. Revenge is an art form. It requires patience, intelligence, and perfect timing. You can't just react emotionally and hope for the best. No, you have to think several steps ahead. You have to anticipate every move, plan for every reaction, and make sure that when you finally strike, the impact is dead. I spent the next 3 weeks living a double life, just like Marcus. During the day, I was the loving wife. I cooked dinners, asked about his day, smiled when he kissed me goodbye. But inside, I was planning, calculating, preparing for the moment when I would pull back the curtain and expose him for exactly what he was. The first thing I did was secure my own financial future. I opened a separate bank account that Marcus knew nothing about. I started transferring small amounts of money from our joint account into this new one. Nothing so large that he'd notice, but enough that over a few weeks, I had a safety net of about $8,000. I also started saving every penny I earned from my freelance work into this account. Next, I made copies of everything. Our bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents, car titles, everything. I documented every suspicious charge, every lie, every piece of evidence that proved his infidelity. I saved all the photos and reports from Claire, the private investigator. I created a detailed timeline of his affair with dates, locations, and receipts, but I didn't stop there because I wasn't just planning to divorce him. I was planning to make sure everyone in his life knew exactly who he really was. understanding the players. Marcus was very image conscious. He cared deeply about what people thought of him. At work, he was known as the charming, dedicated family man. He had photos of us on his desk. At work, he talked about our marriage in meetings, using it as an example of work-life balance. His boss, Mr. Richardson, was a traditional man who valued loyalty and integrity above all else. Marcus had been angling for a promotion for months, trying to impress him at every turn. In our social circle, Marcus was the guy everyone liked, the fun one at parties, the one who remembered birthdays and made thoughtful toasts. Friends saw us as relationship goals. They'd often say things like, "I hope we're as happy as you two when we've been married that long." If only they knew the truth, Jessica, the other woman, was another interesting piece of the puzzle. According to Claire's investigation, she was 28 years old, ambitious, and genuinely believed Marcus when he said he was divorced. She'd apparently told her friends about him, about how she'd finally found a good guy after so many bad relationships. In her mind, she was the girlfriend, maybe even the future wife. She had no idea she was actually the other woman. This gave me an idea, a brilliant, terrible, perfect idea. And what if I didn't just expose Marcus? What if I orchestrated a situation where his lies collapsed all around him at once? Where everyone who believed in him, everyone who trusted him, discovered the truth simultaneously? The gathering storm, I started with small moves. I reached out to Marcus's boss's assistant, a friendly woman named Paula who I'd met at company events. I casually mentioned that Marcus and I were thinking about renewing our vows for our 5th anniversary and wanted to do something special at the company's upcoming annual dinner. Could she help me coordinate a surprise? Paula loved the idea. She thought it was so romantic. She even got Mr. Richardson involved, who thought it would be a wonderful morale booster for the company. They agreed to give me a few minutes during the dinner to make a special presentation. Perfect. Next, I contacted Jessica. Not directly, of course. That would tip my hand too early. Instead, I created a fake email account and sent her a message pretending to be from a wedding planning service. The email congratulated her on her recent engagement inquiry and offered her a free consultation for her upcoming wedding. She responded, confused, saying she hadn't inquired about wedding planning. I wrote back apologizing for the confusion, saying we must have mixed up client files, and mentioned that the inquiry came from someone named Marcus who'd listed her as the bride-to-be. The seed was planted. She'd ask Marcus about it, he'd have to lie again, and she'd start to notice the inconsistencies. I also started talking to our mutual friends about how excited I was for our 5th anniversary. I posted old photos of our wedding on social media with captions about how blessed I was to have such a loyal, loving husband. I made sure Marcus saw these posts. Each one made him a little more uncomfortable, a little more nervous. He started acting strange, more distant, more distracted. "Everything okay?" I'd ask sweetly. Yeah, just stressed about work." He'd say, "Liar. I won't lie to you. This period was one of the hardest of my life. Every day, I had to look at the man I'd loved and pretend everything was fine. Every night, I had to lie next to him, knowing he'd been with another woman just hours before. There were moments when I wanted to break down, to scream at him, to demand answers, but I held on, because I knew that temporary satisfaction would cost me the long-term justice I deserved. I confided in only one person during this time, my sister Rachel. She was the only one I could trust completely, the only one who wouldn't accidentally let something slip. When I told her everything, she was furious on my behalf. "Sarah, are you sure about this plan?" She asked me over coffee one afternoon. Wouldn't it be easier to just confront him and file for divorce? Easier, yes, I said, but would it be justice? He's been lying to me for 6 months, Rachel. 6 months of looking me in the eye and deceiving me. 6 months of making me feel like I was crazy for having any doubts. He deserves to feel exactly how I felt when I discovered the truth. He deserves to have his world collapse in the most public, humiliating way possible." Rachel nodded slowly. "Then I'll help you, whatever you need." Having her support meant everything. She became my sounding board, my reality check, my partner in this mission for justice. Now, the final preparations. The company dinner was scheduled for a Saturday evening, exactly 3 weeks after I'd started planning my revenge. It was a formal event held at a luxury hotel downtown. Employees were encouraged to bring their spouses. It was the perfect setting. In the days leading up to the event, I prepared my presentation. I created a video montage, the kind you'd see at anniversary parties or weddings. It started with beautiful photos of Marcus and me through the years. Our wedding day, vacations we'd taken, holidays with family. Set to a romantic song, it looked like a celebration of our love, but then, halfway through, the tone shifted. The romantic music cut off abruptly, and new images appeared, screenshots of text messages between Marcus and Jessica. Photos from the private investigators showing them together at restaurants, hotels, walking hand in hand through the city. Bank statements with highlighted charges for jewelry I never received, dinners I never attended. Okay, and then the final slide, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Tonight, you all get to see who Marcus really is. I watched the video dozens of times, refining it, making sure every piece of evidence was clear and undeniable. It was devastating. It was perfect. I also prepared a second video specifically for Jessica. This one would be sent to her email the night of the dinner, time to arrive exactly when Marcus would be standing in front of everyone at the company event. It contained proof that Marcus and I were still married, still living together, still very much in a relationship while he was dating her. Everything was in place, the trap was set, all that was left was to spring it. The morning of the company dinner, Marcus was in a good mood. He actually seemed excited, which was ironic considering what was about to happen. He spent extra time getting ready, putting on his best suit, the navy blue one I'd bought him for our anniversary 2 years ago. Again, the irony was almost painful. "You look beautiful," he said when I came downstairs in my dress. It was a red dress, elegant and sophisticated. I'd chosen it carefully. I wanted to look powerful, confident, unforgettable. Because tonight wasn't just about exposing him, it was about reclaiming my dignity. "Thank you," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "You look great too." We drove to the hotel together. The whole way there, he talked about work, about his hopes for the promotion, about how important tonight was for his career. Each word was another nail in his coffin, though he didn't know it yet, Mr. Richardson is going to announce the new regional manager position tonight, Marcus said, excitement in his voice. "I think I have a real shot at it, Sarah. This could change everything for us." I looked out the window, watching the city lights blur past. "Yes," I said quietly. "Tonight is definitely going to change everything." The hotel ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, elegant table settings, a small stage at the front for speeches and presentations. There were probably 200 people there, employees, spouses, upper management, everyone dressed to impress, mingling with drinks in hand. Marcus immediately went into networking mode, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, playing the part of the charismatic go-getter. I stayed by his side, smiling politely, playing the supportive wife. Several people complimented us on how happy we looked together. One of Marcus's coworkers even said, "You two are what marriage should look like." If only they knew. Ken Paula, the assistant I'd been coordinating with, found me near the bar. "Sarah, everything is all set. We've got your video queued up, mister. Richardson is going to call you up right after dinner, before the award ceremony. He's really excited about it." "Yeah, perfect," I said, my heart racing. "Thank you so much for helping make this special, KK." As we sat down for dinner, I noticed Marcus was texting someone under the table. I caught a glimpse of the screen. "Wish you were here tonight." He was texting Jessica. Even now, in a room full of people sitting right next to his wife, he couldn't help himself. Something cold settled in my chest. This was the right thing to do. He deserved everything that was about to happen. Dinner ended around 8 o'clock, Mr. Richardson took the stage, welcomed everyone, made some announcements about company achievements. Then he said the words I'd been waiting for. "Ken, now before we get to the awards, we have a very special surprise." One of our own, Sarah Chen, has put together a beautiful tribute for her husband Marcus as they approach their 5th wedding anniversary. "Sarah, would you like to come up?" The room applauded. Marcus looked genuinely surprised and touched. He squeezed my hand as I stood up. "Babe, you didn't have to do this," he whispered. I looked down at him. Oh, I really did. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking on the polished floor. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces in the crowd, which was probably for the best. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began. Marriage is built on trust, honesty, and commitment. At least that's what I thought when I married Marcus 4 years ago. Tonight, I want to share with you all the truth about my marriage. Please watch. I nodded to the AV technician. The lights dimmed, the video started. For the first minute, it was exactly what everyone expected. Beautiful photos, romantic music, happy memories. I saw people smiling, some women wiping away sentimental tears. Marcus was beaming, probably thinking this was just a sweet tribute. Then the music stopped, the screen went black for just a moment, and then the truth began. First image, a text message conversation. "Marcus, I miss you so much, can't wait to see you tomorrow." "Jessica, me too. I love you." Marcus, I love you more. The room went silent. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Next, photos from the private investigator, Marcus and Jessica at a restaurant leaning close over a table. Oh. Marcus and Jessica walking hand in hand through a park. Marcus and Jessica kissing outside a hotel. I heard gasps. Someone said, "Oh my God." I glanced at Marcus. His face had gone completely white. He was frozen in his seat, staring at the screen in absolute horror. The video continued. Bank statements appeared with highlighted charges. A receipt from a jewelry store with "For Jessica" written in Marcus's handwriting. Hotel invoices. Text messages where he called me his crazy ex-wife to Jessica, claiming he was divorced. The final segment was perhaps the most damaging. It was a video clip from the private investigator, time-stamped just 3 days ago. Marcus and Jessica in a coffee shop, and the audio was crystal clear. "Yek and Jessica, when are you going to tell your ex about us officially?" Marcus, "Soon, babe. I just need to settle some financial things first. You know how messy divorces can be, Jessica, I know. I just can't wait until we can be public about this. I'm tired of hiding." Marcus, "Me too. Soon, I promise. You're the only one I want to be with." Okay. The screen faded to black, and the final words appeared in stark white letters, "Except he was never divorced. We're still married, we still live together." And while he was promising you forever, he was promising me the same thing. The lights came back on. The silence in the room was deafening. I stood at the podium, looking directly at Marcus. His mouth was opening and closing, but no words were coming out. He looked like a fish drowning in air. Around the room, people were staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Marcus told me I was his whole world, I continued, my voice echoing in the silent ballroom. Every morning, he kissed me goodbye and told me he loved me. Every night, he came home and held me. And the whole time, for 6 months, he was living a completely separate life with another woman. He lied to her about being divorced. He lied to me about working late. He lied to all of you about being a devoted husband, Mr. Richardson stood up, his face red with anger. Marcus, is this true? Marcus finally found his voice. "Sarah, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted. "Explain how you accidentally had a 6-month affair. Explain how you accidentally spent thousands of our dollars on another woman. Explain how you accidentally erased me from your life story." He stood up, looking around desperately at the crowd, seeking sympathy or understanding. He found none. His co-workers were looking away, uncomfortable and embarrassed. Some of the wives were glaring at him with pure hatred. "Mr. Richardson looked absolutely disgusted. This is a private matter," Marcus stammered. "This isn't the place. You made it public the moment you paraded our marriage around this office while betraying it," I said. My voice was calm, steady, powerful. "You used me as a prop to make yourself look good. You talked about our relationship in meetings, put our photos on your desk, and played the role of the faithful husband. So yes, Marcus, this is exactly the place to reveal the truth." Aunt Paula, the assistant who'd helped me, was staring at Marcus with her hand over her mouth. "I can't believe. We all thought you were so devoted to her." "I am," Marcus said desperately. "Sarah, honey, please. Can we talk about this privately? Now you want privacy?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Where was this concern for privacy when you were kissing Jessica in public restaurants? When you were holding her hand in parking lots? When you were holding her hand in parking lots? When you were checking into hotels in the middle of the day?" Yokan. Just then, the doors to the ballroom burst open. A woman rushed in, her face streaked with tears, her phone in her hand. It was Jessica. The timing was perfect. I'd scheduled the email to her to arrive at exactly 8:30, knowing it would take her about 10 minutes to drive from her apartment to the hotel. She'd clearly read the email, seen the proof that Marcus was still married, and come straight here. "You liar!" she screamed, pointing at Marcus. "Adaufnen thereafter hand and she screamed, pointing at Marcus. "You said you were divorced! You said she was your crazy ex!" The room erupted in chaos. Everyone was talking at once. Jessica stormed toward our table, and I stepped down from the stage, meeting her halfway. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know," she said, her voice breaking. "I swear I had no idea you were still together." "He told me," he said. "I know," I said quietly. "He lied to both of us." She turned to Marcus, fury replacing the pain in her eyes. "How could you? I thought we were building a future together. I thought you loved me." Marcus was backing away, looking between the two of us like a cornered animal. "Jessica, I can explain." "Sarah, please." "Everyone, this is just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Mr. Richardson's voice cut through the noise like a knife. The only misunderstanding here was us thinking you were a man of integrity. Marcus, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." The room went silent again. Marcus's face crumbled. "Sir, please, you can't. De purchasen zat de dadra not cash der can I think zat," Richardson said contract des. "I absolutely can, Mr. Richardson said coldly. "We have a morality clause in our employee contracts. More than that, I will not have someone of your character representing this company. You've betrayed your wife, deceived your colleague, and lied to all of us. You're done here." 2 security guards appeared, flanking Marcus. He looked around desperately, seeking any ally. There were none. His co-workers had turned their backs. His friends were looking away. As security led him toward the exit, he looked back at me one last time. "Sarah, please. I love you." "We can fix this." I met his eyes with a cold, steady gaze. "You don't love anyone but yourself." "And we're done. My lawyer will be in touch. You have until tomorrow evening to get your things out of my house." "Your house?" he said, confusion mixing with the devastation on his face. "Yes, my house. The one my grandmother left me that we've been living in. The one that's solely in my name. Didn't think I'd check those documents, did you? You have no legal claim to it. So get your things and get out of my life." And with that, security escorted him out of the ballroom. The doors closed behind him, and he was gone. The moment Marcus was escorted out, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted. It was like everyone had been holding their breath, and now they could finally exhale. People started moving again, talking in hushed tones, looking at me with expressions of sympathy, admiration, and shock. Mr. Richardson approached me first. "Mrs. Chen, I cannot apologize enough for what you've been through. If I had known the kind of man Marcus really was, he never would have gotten as far in this company as he did." Thank you," I said quietly. "I appreciate that. If there's anything you need, any resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I want you to know that this company does not tolerate this kind of behavior. We'll be reviewing our policies to ensure nothing like this happens again." He walked away, leaving me standing in the center of the room. Several people came up to me after that. Marcus's co-workers, some of whom I'd known for years, expressed their disbelief and support. One woman, Linda from accounting, hugged me tightly. "You're so brave," she whispered. "What you did tonight took incredible strength. I just couldn't let him get away with it," I said. Paula, the assistant, approached with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. If I had known what he was doing, I never would have helped coordinate this. I feel terrible, don't?" I told her. "You helped me expose the truth. You gave me the platform to show everyone who he really is. I couldn't have done this without you." Jessica stood off to the side, looking lost and broken. I walked over to her. Up close, I could see she was younger than I'd thought, with kind eyes that were now red from crying. "I really didn't know," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. The way he talked about his divorce, about how difficult the separation had been, I believed every word. "He's a good liar," I said. "That's what makes it hurt so much. He made both of us believe we were special, that we were loved." "I feel so stupid," she said, wiping her eyes. "All those times he couldn't see me on weekends, or couldn't stay overnight, or didn't want to post photos together on social media. I thought he was just being cautious because of the divorce. He was with you." "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "You were trusting. There's a difference. He took advantage of that trust." Yeah, she looked at me with something like gratitude mixed with guilt. "I'm so sorry for my part in this, even though I didn't know. You didn't deserve this, neither did you," I said. "We were both victims of his lies." She nodded, took a shaky breath, and then quietly left the ballroom. I watched her go, feeling an unexpected sense of sympathy for her. Yes, she'd been with my husband, but she'd been deceived too. Marcus had used us both, manipulated us both, and destroyed both our lives with his selfishness. My sister Rachel was waiting for me outside the hotel. I'd texted her as soon as the presentation was over, and she'd immediately driven over. When I walked out into the cool night air, she rushed over and wrapped me in a tight hug. "För Pambles, the Stanger and Deprester fight, Bir Besign Fidan and Sakshur Ik Sang." "How do you feel?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Relieved, exhausted, still angry, all of the above?" "You were incredible in there," she said. "I wish I could have seen his face." "It was everything I hoped it would be," I said. "Complete devastation. He had no idea it was coming." We drove back to the house together, my house, as I'd reminded Marcus. The house my grandmother had left me when she passed away 5 years ago. Marcus had always acted like it was ours, but legally it was mine alone. He'd never contributed to the mortgage because there wasn't one. It was paid off completely in my name, and he had no claim to it whatsoever. When we pulled up to the driveway, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was my space, my sanctuary, and tomorrow it would be free of his presence entirely. Rachel stayed with me that night. We didn't talk much, we just sat on the couch, drinking tea, processing everything that had happened. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. "Sarah, please. We need to talk. I can explain everything. I made a mistake, but I love you. Please don't throw away our marriage." I stared at the message for a long moment, then I blocked his number. Sunday morning arrived with bright sunshine streaming through the bedroom windows. It felt symbolic, like a new beginning. Rachel made breakfast while I started going through Marcus's belongings, sorting what he'd need to take with him. Around noon, Marcus showed up. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen, his clothes wrinkled, his hair messy. He'd clearly spent the night somewhere uncomfortable, probably his car or a cheap motel. Rachel answered the door. "She's giving you 2 hours to pack your essentials. A moving company will deliver the rest of your things to wherever you're staying within the week." "I need to talk to her," Marcus said desperately. "I need to talk to her," Marcus said desperately. "Please, Rachel, I need to explain." Again, there's nothing to explain. "There's nothing to explain," I said, appearing behind Rachel. "You lied. You cheated. You betrayed me in every possible way. There's no explanation that makes that okay, Sarah. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love you. I want to fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. You had 6 months to think about our marriage, Marcus. 6 months of lying to my face, 6 months of making me feel crazy for having any doubts. You didn't make a mistake. You made hundreds of conscious choices to betray me. And now you have to live with the consequences. I'll lose everything," he said, tears streaming down his face. "My job, my home, my wife, my reputation, everything." "Yes," I said simply. "You will. Just like I almost lost my sanity, my self-respect, and my ability to trust people. The difference is you did this to yourself. I was just the one brave enough to expose it." He stood there, shoulders shaking, looking utterly broken. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. This was the man I'd loved, the man I'd planned a future with. But then I remembered the parking lot. I'd champagne tavan, the worry, the kiss, the lies, the way he'd looked at Jessica with the same love he'd promised to me, and the pity vanished. "Your time is running out," Rachel said. "Start packing." He went upstairs silently. For the next 2 hours, we heard him moving around, packing bags, opening drawers. Rachel and I stayed downstairs, making sure he didn't take anything that wasn't his. When he finally came down with several suitcases and boxes, he looked at me one last time. "I really did love you," he said quietly. "I know you don't believe me, but I did." "If that's what you call love," I replied, "then I never want to be loved by you again." He loaded his things into his car and drove away. I watched from the window until his car disappeared around the corner. Then I locked the door, turned to Rachel, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I cried. Not because I missed him, not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I was finally free to feel everything I'd been holding in for weeks. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, the relief, it all came pouring out in huge, gasping sobs while my sister held me and told me everything was going to be okay. On Monday morning, I met with my lawyer, a sharp woman named Diane who specialized in divorce cases. I'd consulted with her weeks ago, preparing for this moment, and now it was time to make it official. "You've got a strong case," Diane said, reviewing all the evidence I'd compiled. The infidelity, the financial deception, the documented lies. In this state, adultery can definitely affect divorce settlements. Plus, since the house is solely in your name and you have separate accounts now, the division of assets will be relatively straightforward. "King, I want this done as quickly as possible," I said. "I don't want to drag this out for years." "I'll file for divorce immediately," she assured me. "Given the circumstances and the evidence, I expect we can have this finalized within a few months." True to her word, Diane filed the papers that same day. Marcus was served with divorce papers at his temporary apartment by Wednesday. He tried to call me multiple times, but I'd blocked his number. He tried to reach out through friends, but I'd asked them to respect my boundaries. He even showed up at the house once, but Rachel was there and sent him away with a threat to call the police if he came back. News of what happened at the company dinner spread quickly. In today's world, nothing stays private for long. Several people who'd been at the event posted about it on social media without naming names at first, but it didn't take long for the story to get out. Within a week, it seemed like everyone in our social circle knew what Marcus had done. The responses varied. Some people reached out to me with support and encouragement. They praised me for my courage, said I deserved better, offered to help in any way they could. Others were less kind. A few people, mostly Marcus's old friends, tried to suggest I'd been too harsh, that exposing him publicly was cruel, that I should have handled it privately. One person even had the audacity to suggest I must have done something to push him away. I blocked those people immediately. I didn't need their judgments or their victim blaming in my life. The most interesting reactions came from other women who'd experienced similar betrayals. I received dozens of messages from friends, acquaintances, even strangers who'd somehow heard about what happened. They shared their own stories of infidelity and betrayal. Many said I'd inspired them to stand up for themselves, to demand the respect they deserved, to not accept less than they were worth. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from a woman named Maria who I'd met briefly at a party years ago. She wrote, "Your courage gave me the strength to finally leave my husband. He'd been cheating on me for 2 years, and I knew, but I was too scared to do anything about it. Watching you stand up and expose the truth, even though it was painful, even though it was public, showed me that I deserve better. Thank you for being brave enough to fight back. Reading messages like that made everything worth it. Yes, my marriage was over. Yes, I was hurt and angry and grieving. But I'd also sparked something in other people. I'd shown that you don't have to accept betrayal silently. You don't have to protect someone else's reputation at the cost of your own dignity." The weeks following the divorce filing were strange. The house felt different without Marcus's presence. Bigger, somehow, quieter. There were moments when I'd forget he was gone, when I'd expect to hear his keys in the door or his footsteps on the stairs. But then reality would settle in, and I'd remember, he was gone. This was my space now, just mine, and I could reshape it however I wanted. I started small. I rearranged the furniture in the living room. Moving the couch to where I'd always thought it should go, but Marcus had disagreed. I bought new bedding for our bedroom. My bedroom, I corrected myself. I took down the photos of us that had hung on the walls and replaced them with artwork I'd always loved but he'd said didn't match the decor. Each small change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I'd lost somewhere along the way. It wasn't about erasing him entirely. It was about making the space mine again and filling it with things that made me happy rather than things we'd compromised on. Rachel visited often during those first few weeks. She'd bring takeout and we'd eat while watching terrible reality TV shows. She never pushed me to talk about my feelings, but she was there when I needed to. Some days we'd laugh, some days I'd cry. Most days were a mix of both. How are you really doing? She asked me one evening, about 3 weeks after the company dinner. I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, some moments I'm fine, great even. I feel free, like this weight has been lifted off my shoulders. But other moments, I'm angry all over again. Or sad. Or both. It's like I'm grieving the person I thought he was, even though that person never really existed. Yeah, that makes sense, Rachel said. You didn't just lose a husband. You lost the future you'd imagined, the trust you'd built, the version of reality you thought you were living in. So that's a lot to process. She was right. It wasn't just about Marcus leaving. It was about everything that loss represented. The dreams we'd shared that would never happen. The inside jokes that no longer made me smile. The memories that were now tainted by the knowledge that he'd been lying even in our happiest moments. Why now? About a month after everything happened, I received an unexpected call from Jessica. I'd given her my number the night of the company dinner, thinking she might need someone to talk to who understood what it felt like to be deceived by Marcus. But I hadn't heard from her since that night, so when her name appeared on my phone screen, I was surprised. "We can dentir mun tai and din tai." "Hi, Sarah," she said when I answered. Her voice was tentative, uncertain. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling." "It's fine," I said. "How are you?" "I'm managing," she replied. "I actually called because I wanted to apologize again. I know I said it that night, but I've been thinking about it a lot and I feel terrible about what happened." "Jessica, you were lied to. You have nothing to apologize for, I know, but still, I was with someone's husband. Even though I didn't know, I still feel responsible somehow, and I wanted you to know that I ended things completely. I blocked his number, his email, everything. I never want to see or hear from him again." "Good," I said. "You deserve better than him." There was a pause, and then she said, "Can I ask you something?" "How did you do it? How did you stand up there in front of all those people and expose him like that?" "I don't think I could have been that brave." I considered the question. "I think it was because I realized that his comfort mattered more to him than my happiness. He was willing to humiliate me privately, to make me feel crazy and paranoid, to gaslight me for months. So why should I protect his public image? Why should I care about his reputation when he didn't care about my heart? That makes sense, she said quietly. I wish I'd known who he really was before I wasted 6 months on him. We both do, I said. Ed. But at least now we know, and we'll never let someone treat us that way again. We talked for a little while longer, sharing our experiences, finding common ground in our shared betrayal. By the end of the call, I felt an unexpected sense of connection to her. We'd both been victims of the same man's lies, and there was something healing about acknowledging that together. One positive thing that came out of this entire situation was a surge in my freelance work. Word spread about what had happened, and while some people saw me as controversial, others saw me as strong and principled. Several business owners reached out, saying they wanted to work with someone who had integrity and courage. My client list grew, I raised my rates, I started taking on bigger, more interesting projects. The graphic design work that had been just a job before became a passion again. I threw myself into my work, creating designs that felt more authentic and creative than anything I'd done in years. One client, a woman who ran a nonprofit for domestic violence survivors, specifically sought me out because of my story. You're exactly the kind of person I want representing our organization, she said. Someone who understands what it's like to be betrayed and who had the courage to stand up for herself. Working on that project was incredibly fulfilling. The designs I created for her organization were some of my best work, and knowing they'd be used to help other women escape abusive situations made the whole experience meaningful in a way my work hadn't been before. During my marriage, I'd lost touch with a lot of things I used to love. Hobbies I'd set aside because Marcus thought they were silly or a waste of time. Friends I'd drifted away from because they weren't couple friends. Dreams I'd put on hold because we were supposed to be building a life together. Now, with Marcus gone, I started reclaiming those pieces of myself. I rejoined a book club I'd left 3 years ago when Marcus complained that I was spending too many evenings out. The women welcomed me back with open arms, and I remembered how much I'd missed discussing stories and ideas with people who appreciated literature the way I did. I started painting again, something I'd loved in college but had stopped doing after Marcus once commented that he didn't see the point in making art that wasn't going to be sold or displayed professionally. I set up an easel in the spare bedroom and spent hours just creating for the sake of creating, not worrying about whether it was good enough or meaningful enough or anything enough. It was just for me, and that was perfect. I reconnected with old friends. Sarah from college, who I'd lost touch with because Marcus didn't like her boyfriend. Amy from my first job, who I'd stopped calling because our girls' nights conflicted with Marcus's preferred schedule. They'd both heard about what happened, and they both welcomed me back into their lives without judgment or questions. Yeah, we missed you, Amy said when we met for coffee. You kind of disappeared after you got married. Yeah, I know, I admitted. I think I lost myself for a while, but I'm finding my way back. Well, we're glad you're back, Sarah said. The Sarah we knew wouldn't have put up with what that jerk did to you. It's good to see her again. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Marcus didn't contest anything. In fact, he signed whatever papers Diane sent him without argument. I think he knew that fighting would only mean more public exposure of his actions, and his reputation was already in shambles. Better to end it quickly and try to move on. In the settlement, I kept the house, obviously. We divided the joint savings account 50-50, though there wasn't much left after all his spending on Jessica. He took his car, I kept mine. We had no children, thankfully, which made everything simpler. The judge granted the divorce on the grounds of adultery. The whole court proceeding took less than an hour. When it was over, when the judge signed the final papers, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief, mostly, but also a kind of sadness for what could have been if he'd just been honest, if he'd just been the man he'd pretended to be. Diane shook my hand as we left the courthouse. You should be proud of yourself, she said. You handled this with more grace and strength than most people could have managed. Thank you, I said, for everything. Any time, though I hope you never need my services again, she added with a smile. I smiled back, so do I. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Marcus. It was completely by chance, at a grocery store on the other side of town. I was reaching for a carton of milk when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Sarah, I turned, and there he was. He looked different, thinner, older somehow. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he was wearing clothes I didn't recognize, wrinkled and ill-fitting. Ed Marcus, I said neutrally. How are you? He asked. The question was absurd given everything that had happened, but I answered anyway. I'm good, really good, actually. He nodded, looking down at his shoes. I'm glad you deserve to be happy. Deserve to be happy? There was an awkward silence. I could have just walked away, maybe I should have, but there was something I needed to know. Why did you do it? I asked. If you weren't happy, if you wanted to be with someone else, why didn't you just tell me? Why all the lies? All the lies? He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with regret. I don't know. I think I wanted everything. The stability of our marriage, the excitement of something new. I convinced myself I could have both, that you'd never find out, that I wasn't really hurting anyone as long as no one knew. But I did find out, I said, and you did hurt people. You hurt me, you hurt Jessica, you hurt everyone who trusted you. I know, he said. I think about it every day. I lost everything because I was selfish and stupid. Yes, you did, I agreed. There was no sympathy in my voice, just stating facts. I hope someday you figure out why you thought you had the right to treat people that way. And I hope you never do it to anyone else. Okay, he looked like he wanted to say more, but I didn't give him the chance. I took my milk, put it in my cart, and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had no interest in reopening it. In the months following my divorce, I had a lot of time to think about everything that had happened, about trust, about love, about the difference between the two, and I learned some important lessons that I want to share with anyone who might be going through something similar. First, trust your instincts. Looking back, there were signs, small things that didn't add up, moments where something felt off, but I ignored them because I loved him, because I wanted to believe the best. I learned that when something feels wrong, it's worth investigating, not with paranoia or jealousy, but with honest curiosity. Your intuition is often protecting you from something your heart doesn't want to see. Next second, you are never too invested to walk away. I'd spent 7 years with Marcus, built a life with him, imagined a future with him. Ending that was terrifying. But staying would have been worse. No amount of time invested is worth sacrificing your self-respect. No history is more important than your future happiness. Third, exposing the truth is not the same as seeking revenge. Some people called what I did cruel or vindictive, but I disagree. I didn't make up lies about Marcus. I didn't ruin his life with false accusations. I simply revealed the truth that he'd been hiding. If the truth destroyed his reputation, that's because his actions were destructive. I just shined a light on what he'd done in the shadows. Fourth, healing isn't linear. There were days when I felt strong and confident and proud of how I'd handled everything. And there were days when I stayed in bed crying over ... the loss of what I'd thought my life would be. Both of those responses were valid. Both were part of the process. You don't have to be strong every day. You just have to keep moving forward one day at a time. And finally, the most important lesson, you are enough, exactly as you are. Marcus's betrayal made me question everything about myself. Was I not pretty enough, not interesting enough, not loving enough? But the truth is, his choices had nothing to do with my worth. He cheated because of his own brokenness, his own issues, his own selfishness. I could have been perfect, and he still would have done what he did. Realizing that was the most freeing part of this entire experience. 6 months after the divorce, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment event. The organizer had heard my story and thought it would inspire other women who'd faced similar situations. I was hesitant at first. Talking about the worst experience of my life in front of strangers wasn't exactly appealing, but something about the opportunity felt right, so I agreed. The event was held at a community center on a Saturday afternoon. There were about 100 women in the audience, ranging from young 20-somethings to women in their 60s and 70s. As I stood at the podium, looking out at all those faces, I felt a surge of nervousness. But then I saw a woman in the third row nodding encouragingly at me, and I found my voice. My name is Sarah, I began, and I want to tell you about the day I discovered my husband had been lying to me for 6 months. And I told them everything, the parking lot encounter, the investigation, the planning, the company dinner reveal. I talked about the pain, the anger, the fear, and the eventual liberation. I shared the lessons I'd learned and the ways I'd grown. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then slowly people started clapping. It built into genuine applause, and when I looked out at the audience, many of them were crying. After the talk, dozens of women came up to me. They shared their own stories, thanked me for my honesty, told me I'd given them hope or courage or validation. One older woman, probably in her 70s, took my hand and said, I stayed in a marriage with a cheating husband for 40 years because I thought I had no other choice. If I'd had someone like you to show me it was possible to stand up for myself, my life might have been very different. Thank you for being brave. That moment right there made everything worth it. All the pain, all the public humiliation, all the difficult days. If my story could help even one person find the courage to demand better, then it all had meaning. About 8 months after the divorce, I met someone new. I wasn't looking for a relationship. In fact, I'd convinced myself I wasn't interested in dating at all. But life has a funny way of surprising you. His name was David, and I met him at a coffee shop. I was working on a design project, laptop open, completely absorbed in my work, when he accidentally bumped my table and almost knocked over my coffee. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," he said, steadying the cup before it could spill. "I'm such a klutz." "Yet it's okay," I said, laughing. No harm done. We started talking, just casual conversation at first. He was an architect, also working on a project at the coffee shop because his home office felt too isolating. We talked about work, about the neighborhood, about the best items on the coffee shop menu. It was easy, comfortable, natural. Before he left, he asked if he could buy me a coffee sometime as an apology for almost destroying my laptop. I hesitated. The wounds from Marcus were still fresh, the trust still fragile. But something about David's open, honest face made me want to take a chance. "Sure," I said. That would be nice. Our first official coffee date turned into a 2-hour conversation. Our second date was dinner, which turned into a walk through the park. Our third date was a museum visit where we spent the entire day discussing art and architecture and discovering we had similar tastes and values. David knew about my past. I told him early on because I didn't want any secrets between us. I expected him to be scared off, to decide I had too much baggage. But instead he said, "What you went through was terrible, but the way you handled it shows incredible strength. I'd be lucky to be with someone who knows her worth and won't settle for less." Okay, we took things slow. I needed time to rebuild my ability to trust, and he was patient with that. He never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. He was consistent, honest, and kind. Everything Marcus had pretended to be but never was. I'm not saying David fixed me or completed me. I was already whole on my own, but he added something beautiful to my life. He showed me that good men exist, that healthy relationships are possible, that not everyone will betray your trust. Okay? I didn't keep close tabs on Marcus after the divorce, but in a small city, word gets around. I heard through mutual acquaintances that his life had not gone well after everything fell apart. He struggled to find work. When potential employers Googled his name, they found articles and social media posts about what had happened at the company dinner. His reputation in the industry was destroyed. He eventually found a job in sales at a much smaller company, making a fraction of what he'd earned before. Jessica understandably wanted nothing to do with him. She'd moved on, started dating someone else, and from what I heard was much happier. Marcus had tried to reach out to me a few times over the months, emails that I deleted without reading, letters that I threw away unopened. Once, he even showed up at my house, but I didn't answer the door. I had nothing to say to him. He'd made his choices, and now he was living with the consequences. Again, I heard he eventually moved to another state, trying to start fresh where no one knew his story. Part of me hoped he'd learn something from all this, that he'd become a better person, that he'd think twice before lying to and betraying someone else. But honestly, whether he changed or not wasn't my concern. I'd moved on. The experience with Marcus changed me fundamentally, not in a broken way, but in a stronger, wiser way. I learned to trust my instincts. I learned to demand respect. I learned that I didn't need a partner to be complete, but that I deserved a partner who added value to my life rather than taking from it. My relationship with my sister Rachel grew even stronger. She'd been my rock through everything, and I made sure she knew how much I appreciated her. We started a tradition of having dinner together once a week, just the two of us, keeping that bond strong. My career flourished. The confidence I'd gained from standing up for myself translated into my professional life. I negotiated better rates, took on more challenging projects, and even hired an assistant to help manage my growing client list. I bought a dog, a rescue named Luna, who'd been abandoned by her previous owner. Taking care of her, giving her a loving home after she'd been betrayed by someone she trusted, felt healing in an unexpected way. We were both rebuilding our lives, learning to trust again. My house, once filled with memories of Marcus, became truly mine. I repainted every room, choosing colors I loved. I redecorated with furniture and art that reflected my taste. I created a space that felt authentic and welcoming, a place where I could be completely myself. If there's one thing I want anyone who hears this story to understand, It's this: you do not have to accept betrayal quietly. You do not have to protect someone else's reputation at the cost of your own peace. You do not have to make yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. When someone lies to you, cheats on you, disrespects you, you have every right to stand up and say no more. You have every right to expose the truth, to demand accountability, to walk it away with your head held high. Yeah, will it be easy? No. Will it be painful? Absolutely. Will some people judge you for how you handle it? Probably. But your healing, your dignity, your future happiness is more important than anyone else's comfort with your reaction to being hurt. Marcus lied to my face for 6 months. He made me doubt my own sanity. He stole time from my life that I can never get back. And when I discovered the truth, I made sure there were consequences. Not because I'm vengeful, but because actions should have consequences, because lies should be exposed. Because betrayal should not be swept under the rug for the sake of keeping up appearances. My final move, that presentation at the company dinner, left him speechless. It destroyed his reputation, cost him his job, ended his relationship with Jessica, and ultimately led to our divorce. And I don't regret it for a single second. Because here's the truth: he destroyed his own life the moment he decided to cheat. I just made sure everyone else could see what he'd done. I just refused to carry his secrets for him. I just demanded that the truth be told, and in doing so, I freed myself. I freed Jessica. And maybe, just maybe, I inspired other people to stand up for themselves too. It's been over a year now since that night at the company dinner. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. But one thing is constant: I am stronger now than I was then. I'm in a healthy relationship with a man who respects me. I have a thriving career doing work I love. I have a home that reflects who I am. I have friendships that nourish me. I have a life that is authentically mine. Marcus tried to take all of that from me with his lies. He tried to make me small, to keep me in the dark, to use me as a prop in his perfect life performance while he did whatever he wanted behind the scenes. But I didn't let him. I fought back. I exposed the truth. I reclaimed my life. And if you're going through something similar, if someone you love has betrayed you, if you're wondering whether it's worth it to stand up for yourself, let me tell you, it is. It absolutely is. You deserve honesty. You deserve loyalty. You deserve respect. And if someone in your life can't give you those things, then they don't deserve a place in your life at all. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for demanding better. Don't let anyone convince you that you're overreacting or being too harsh. Trust yourself. Stand up for yourself. Fight for the life and the love you deserve. Because at the end of the day, the person you have to live with, the person whose opinion matters most, is you. And you deserve to look in the mirror and see someone strong, someone brave, someone who refused to be anyone's doormat or fool. Marcus thought he could lie to my face for months and get away with it. But my final move left him speechless, and more importantly, it left me free. That's the power of standing up for yourself. That's the power of demanding the truth. That's the power of refusing to accept anything less than you deserve. Remember that. Hold on to it. And never ever let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve better. Because you do. We all do. It's been over a year since everything happened, and people still ask me if I regret how I handled things. The answer is always the same: absolutely not. Yes, it was dramatic. Yes, it was public. Yes, it caused a massive upheaval in multiple lives. But it was also honest. It was also deserved. And it was also necessary. I sometimes think about what would have happened if I'd done things differently, if I'd confronted Marcus privately, if I'd filed for divorce quietly, if I'd let him keep his reputation intact while I dealt with my pain in silence. In that version of events, Marcus would have probably told people we just grew apart. He would have maintained his image as a good guy. Jessica would have never known she'd been with a married man. His coworkers would still respect him. He'd probably have gotten that promotion, moved on with his life, and maybe even done the same thing to someone else down the line. And I would have carried the weight of his betrayal alone, protecting his secrets, swallowing my pain, being the bigger person by making myself smaller. No, I made the right choice. I told the truth, and the truth set me free. Last I heard, Marcus was engaged to someone new. I hope for her sake that he's changed, that he's learned from what happened. But I also hope she goes into that marriage with her eyes wide open, aware of his past, knowing what he's capable of. Jessica reached out to me a few months ago to tell me she'd gotten engaged to a wonderful man who treats her with respect and honesty. She thanked me again for exposing the truth before she wasted more years on Marcus. We're not close friends, but there's a mutual respect and understanding between us. David and I are still together, and it's the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. We're talking about moving in together soon, taking that next step. But there's no rush. We're building something real, something based on honesty and trust, and that takes time. My career is better than ever. I recently hired 2 more assistants and am considering expanding my business into a full design agency. The woman who once felt like her world was ending has built something new and beautiful from the ashes. And my house, the one Marcus tried to claim as partially his, is filled with love and light and the sounds of life. Luna's tags jingle as she runs through the rooms. Music plays from the kitchen while I cook. Friends visit often, filling the space with laughter. This is the life I fought for. This is what standing up for myself created. And it's more than worth every difficult moment it took to get here. To anyone listening who's going through something similar, who's discovered betrayal, who's wondering if they should speak up or stay silent, I want to leave you with this. Your story matters. Your truth matters. Your pain is valid, and your reaction to that pain is yours to decide. No one else gets to tell you how to handle being betrayed. No one else gets to dictate what consequences are appropriate for someone who hurt you. If speaking out feels right, speak out. If walking away quietly feels right, walk away. If exposing the truth feels necessary, expose it. Trust yourself. You know what you need to heal, what you need to move forward, what you need to reclaim your life. And remember, someone else's actions are never your fault. If a partner cheats, that's not because you weren't enough. If a spouse lies, that's not because you didn't love them properly. Their choices are reflections of their character, not your worth. You are valuable. You are deserving of love and honesty and respect. And if someone in your life can't see that, can't give you that, then they don't deserve a place in your story. Write your own ending. Make it a good one. Make it one that honors who you are and what you deserve. Make it one that years from now you can look back on and feel proud of how you handled yourself, how you stood up, how you refused to accept less than you were worth. He lied to my face for months, but my final move left him speechless, and it left me free. That's the real ending, not the confrontation, not the divorce, not even the rebuild. The real ending is the freedom, the peace. The knowledge that I stood up for myself and came out stronger on the other side. You can too. I believe in you, and I'm rooting for you wherever you are in your journey. Stand strong, speak your truth, demand better, you deserve it.